Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle. My co-host is Rachel Santizo.
Hello, Randall.
Hello. And our guest is Jen Belt. Hi, Jen.
Hello, Jen.
I've been trying to get Jen on for a couple of years now, but the schedule didn't work out. Matt just gave us some new statistics that are really interesting. There are people who occasionally tune in or something like that, and then they have something they call active listeners, and we have between all platforms that we're on, like YouTube and iTunes and Spotify and all that kind of stuff, we have 17,000 active listeners.
Ooh,
so
nice.
To all you 17,000, thank you very much. And one other thing he broke. Well, I'll tell you.
That laugh right now.
Well, we have 85 active listeners in Russia.
This is so mind-blowing.
It is. We're sitting in this little studio in Salt Lake City, Utah, and hello, Russia.
Hi, Igor.
We joke that Igor is her boyfriend or something. And I joke that if Igor ever wants to come to visit us, I'll buy him some good vodka. Right?
Nice.
Yeah. But and then here's the other thing: we have 3,000 active listeners in Salt Lake, and the next closest city is
Iowa,
Columbus, Ohio. 2,000
so
active
close.
listeners in Columbus. Yeah,
Where is that? That actually blows my mind more.
I know.
We need to figure it out.
I know. I
Let's
wish
do a Facebook poll.
somebody in Columbus, if you could somehow get a hold of us. All you got to do is just Google Odyssey House of Utah, and you can go to our web page and look under people who work there, and you'll find me and with my email address,
right.
And just tell me why we have so many listeners and viewers in Columbus, because it's a mystery to us.
Yeah, we would love to know more.
Yes. So Jen Belt is our guest. You look very happy and content, and life is going good.
Life is going great.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, she may not want to share everything, but we always start out with the bad, so let's start out with the good. What's going good in your life right now?
I just started school.
Yay, where?
Slick.
Good for you.
Which is Salt Lake Community College for you outsiders.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to do forensic social work so that I could study the criminogenic side of things. I also work for Odyssey. So we have a lot of therapists, and I want to get more into the criminal side of things and understand the mind of a criminal. And I think it's more to understand myself, to understand how my brain works. And so it took me 2 years. It took me 2 years to get the courage to go, because I haven't been in school since 1998. I dropped out of school in 9th grade. And then I got my GED in prison. And so it took me 2 years to get the courage because I was intimidated. I didn't understand how the college worked. And I really didn't ask the questions to find out. But then I have a couple mentors that are like, you need to do this. And then when I realized they did a placement test to find out where you're at in your education, and like you take those classes, I was sad that I waited so long, but I'm doing great. I got 100% in all my classes. Things are going really well, and my kids are healthy. I love Odyssey. I just got approved. I take meetings into the prison now, so I'm actively involved in the criminal justice system. I'm also a forensic peer support specialist. And so I'm constantly like improving my trainings to be the best version of myself that I can be. And kids are really good and healthy. And so, life is great.
But it wasn't always.
No.
Yeah, for a number of years, maybe tell us your story. I mean, because you really have sort of an interesting background, how things started and where it went downhill, and then how you came back uphill.
Well, my journey started obviously 39 years ago.
I was born. Okay, that's great, Jen. Yeah,
I grew up in a not so fortunate situation. I had a single mom and 2 kids. She did the best she could. She raised us on $3.80 an hour. I I had a lot of sexual abuse as a child on various different ages. I discovered alcohol with my cousins at the age 8. 8. So
Jeez.
Black Velvet was what I drank for the first time. There were times where I remember stealing my mom's cigarettes. And then I started using cocaine with my cousins at the age 11 and 12. And so at that age, I started to get criminal activity. So I had really old boyfriends. When I was 9, I had a 16-year-old boyfriend. Never really any structure or I never had... I was a runner. I was always out doing my own thing. Mom would be at work. So she, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had an older brother. But when I got my first minor consumption when I was 13.
Were you living here in Utah?
No, I'm from Idaho.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's even, it's even more conservative than Utah, isn't it?
Yeah. So I always found myself with older men. I was, like I said, my mom was a single mom. I always engaged myself with the party crowd. I ended up dropping out of school in 9th grade, continuing to use. I used drugs pretty much all of my teenage years. And then I found my first husband when I was 17. And I was in jail. We planned my wedding through the phone in jail. And I got out at 18. And
what were you in jail for?
Possession of, or being under the influence of possession of a simulated controlled substance in a public area.
What's a simulated controlled substance?
So it wasn't actually meth. It was baggied up. I had gotten pulled over and I was driving somebody else's car. And that's the truth. Some people were telling stories. And there was 15 baggies of Epsom salt underneath the console, inside the console. And the cops, I had been in trouble several times. And the cops had told me, we will find a way to get you for this. Because when they tested it on the street, it didn't test positive for meth. And so I ended up with the charges later. And because I was 17, when I was sentenced, I had turned 18. And so the judge made sure that I got the maximum sentence of 90 days in a jail instead of...
in an adult jail.
Yeah, in an adult jail, which is a long time for an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So I did time there for 90 days.
You arrange a marriage.
I arranged my marriage. Yep, I sure did. When I turned 18, I wasn't allowed to live with mom anymore. And so I went to live with my first husband's mom. I ended up I continued to use drugs. I found out I was pregnant when I was 18, gave birth to my daughter when I was 19. State took her because I never stopped using. I think that was really, I can look back at my life and understand the powerlessness of addiction. I think as a child, that's pretty much what I knew is the party life. So I didn't have any conscious or ability to see, I knew it was wrong, right? We all know it's wrong. When drugs are bad, you got to hide them and all that things. But my conscience is I really don't have a reason to change my life. And I remember battling as I was pregnant, the demons that I was fighting when I was pregnant, knowing that it's not okay to do what I'm doing, but not having any kind of control. There was a couple months where I got clean, and then I was in a great relationship, a very toxic relationship. But again, that was my lifestyle. And so when I gave birth to my daughter, I had a moment of reality check because they took my daughter from the hospital, and I now have somebody telling me that you can't do this. This is, if you want your kid, this is what you got to do. And I did it really well. Tell me what to do and I'm going to do it, right? I'm really good at doing that. Okay, in order to get your kid back, you got to do this, 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 this. They labeled me the best case in the state of Idaho. I had my daughter back. Everything was great. I got an apartment. I was working to get my CNA license up at a hospital. For the first time in my life, I was a person, right? But I was being told what to do and I had somebody watching over me. So that was easy. But then my ex got out of prison or out of jail and started engaging again. And it wasn't long before I relapsed. And then I got involved when I was 22. I got involved with Latinos that were from a cartel when I was 22. Well, I met them when I was 20. I was with them for a year and a half, almost 2 years, until I was 22 when I was indicted with federal charges.
What drugs were you involved with at this time? Okay.
Meth was I never, and I don't say never as in, oh my God, I'm better than. I'm saying never as in, fortunately, Idaho didn't have a lot of heroin.
Yeah.
Idaho didn't have a lot of maybe they did and I just wasn't familiar with it, but the crowd that I ran with was meth. Meth was my thing, sometimes cocaine, but meth was definitely my go-to. And so I went to federal prison. Again, somebody's over my thumb. I was able to do all the things. I went to a treatment center that was at a federal halfway house pending my sentencing and pending all the charges and everything. I ended up doing 46 months. It was great. I went to the judge ready for sentencing thinking, oh my God, I've done all this treatment. I've proved myself. And for some reason, and I call it God, I know said whatever's whatever, but for me, that judge looked at me and he said, at the time it was a different name. He's like, Jen, he goes, I want to let you know, I am so proud of you for everything that you've done. You have 16 letters of referencing. You can get your daughter back. You have DCFS here to fight for you to get your kid back. But something in my soul tells me that you need just a little bit more help. He's like, so I'm going to go ahead and sentence you to the guidelines at that time. They couldn't stray away from the guidelines back then. So I got sentenced to 46 months. I had already done 2 years. And so they shipped me out to Dublin, California. But the crazy thing is I had to self-surrender. Do you know how hard it is to take yourself to prison and say, here I am, right?
You mean you have to pay your own way to get to Dublin, California and say, put me in jail.
And that's because I requested to get all my affairs in order with my daughter. I had to go to DCFS court and figure that out, and I had to go through all that. So I ended up going to prison. Best thing that could have happened to me.
How old was she?
She was born in 2003. She was 2. Yep. I signed over my rights to her grandmother so that she wasn't remaining in the system. And I knew this was a hard decision for me, but I knew that I couldn't give her the life that I wanted her. And I didn't want to, and I was going to fight, but once I was sentenced, you know what I mean? Right. So I took the chance and let her be adopted, knowing that I might not see her as often, but there's still a chance, right? She's not going to be with the family that I don't even know, right? And so I let her grandma, my ex-husband's, my first husband's mom, adopt her. She adopted her. Best choice I could have made for that little girl. Prison was the best thing that I can tell you that changed my life. When I went to federal prison, I was 22 years old with 12, 13-year-old emotions, right? Because when you use meth, you stop growing emotionally. So I was 22 years old. I was thousands of miles away from my family. I had support, but I didn't have people. I never got a visit the entire time I was there. And to this day, I'm so thankful because it literally removed me away from what I knew. Mm-hmm. And I took every class in federal prison. Even if people are like, why are you doing that class? I'm like, because I don't know how to live life. I don't have skills. I'm not a good mom, a friend. I knew how to sell drugs, rob people, do more drugs, and do all those things. I didn't know how to live life. So I took communication skills, relationship skills, active listening skills, every drug program they offered. I was the senior baker. So I got good at skills that were new to me, and I took advantage of every single one of them. I studied every religion in prison. I got really familiar with my relationship with my higher power and the spiritual connection that I have today. And I did that really well because I had direction and structure, right?
Yeah, you were like a model prisoner.
Yeah. And people would get so mad at me. Why are you so happy? I'm like, because this is great, right? This is life. I'm feeling these feelings and everything's great. So I loved it there. And I did really well. I supported myself for the most part. I made $75 a month. And I had to budget my money, right? To us, it's wow, that's coffee for the month, right? But no, I had to do everything that I needed to. I'd call my mom once a week. I would always try to call my daughter, write her letters every day. And I had my mom keep all her letters in a box because I had faith that as long as I did what I was supposed to, one day I was going to see her again.
You felt like a woman.
Yeah. Like it was so cool to like grow up, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I learned in psychology class today, off topic really fast, that you don't your prefrontal cortex doesn't even really start growing or mature until you're 25. So
Right.
of course I'm going to make impulsive decisions, right? So when I got out, I was at that age, right? So I got out in 2009 and I was 26 years old. And my life, I just saw through a different pair of eyes. So the majority or the small time from 18 to 22, the irrational decisions, I think like, I'm new to life and only knew one way of life, right? And then prison, I got to grow up with these new skills from 22 until I was 26. And I didn't realize this until like I put my timeline together. But so I got to grow up and see a new pair of eyes. When I got out of prison, people didn't recognize me, like the way that I talked, the way that I was a completely different person. I chose, so my dad, bless his heart in heaven, my dad told me, if you want to change your life, come to Utah and I'll give you the life that you never had. And he wasn't my biological father. He was my older brother's father, but to me, that's my dad. And so I came out here. I didn't know the street names. I knew nothing about Utah. I came out here and I did really well for myself. From 2009, I met my husband. Don't meet your husband at a halfway house, but it seemed like a good idea at this time. I met my husband at the halfway house. We had to jump through all these hoops, but we were married for 11 years. Wow. The first 6 years of our marriage were phenomenal. You know, I was successful. I made $52,000 a year from home. Like I had my daughter, life was great. But what I know that I did wrong was I replaced recovery with religion. And I separated myself from the recovery lifestyle and I became of a certain faith. And I felt like it was what's best for me. And it was nice because being around this kind of group of people, I didn't have to talk about that side of Jen anymore. So it was like out of sight, out of mind, not realizing that those are the people that I needed in my life to help me when I started my mess ups, right? And so it wasn't long before I decided that I could drink like a gentleman. You know what I mean? Like I've been clean this long. I can drink a little bit, right? And I did that. I socially drank, me and my husband socially drank, take it or leave it, for 3 years. So we
That's
socially
good to hear about because
So we socially drank, right? Yeah. But again, then I slowly started moving away from my religious family because that was definitely not allowed, right? So then I was kind of in limbo, right? But I felt like I had control.
And he was in recovery too.
Yeah. Well, he was more of a DBT cognitive person. I was more an AA person or like a always got to be working on yourself type of person, right? And so he let me go to meetings, everything would be great. He was more of a loner. He liked to fish and do all those things. It worked. He was calm. I'm wild, right? Like he was older. So our motto was, our motto was, he kept me responsible and I kept him young because he was significantly older than me. And that worked for a little bit. But so we started drinking socially. Well, when you bring that kind of lifestyle into your life, for me, it brought those other type of people into my life. So it wasn't long before I started drinking more progressively, right? I started drinking more than just weekends. It's crazy because in the AA book, it talks about this, drinking only at parties, drinking all of these things, and it so applies to my life now. And so I did that. I did that for 3 years. And then in the end of drinking, I was hanging out with a friend that I started drinking with a lot. Lots of trips, lots of black velvet, lots of different things. And I knew that person was high one day. And I can tell you where I went wrong is, yes, absolutely. Alcohol is not my drug of choice. Yeah. But what I can tell you is I cannot tell you that I will not take dope if I'm in a bar with somebody offers me a line of dope in the bar. I can't tell you if I'm drunk, I'm going to do it. And if I do it, I lose control. There's no in and out for me. I'm either all in recovery or I'm all out running a gun. And there's never been a in between other than the socially drinking, but it proved to not work. And And so the right person came along, and this is how insane my addiction was. Me and my husband sat down and had a conversation of how we were going to make this work, of how we were going to use it, how often we were going to use it. And it wasn't like my life was bad. My life, everything in my life, I had everything I ever wanted. The house, the car, the job, the kid, the husband. My life was perfect.
Yeah.
Except for
we wanted to have fun, right? And so we literally had a conversation about how it was going to make it work and how we were going to get back from it if it became a problem. 3.5 years of straight use. The first 2 years was fun. Like we had the money, we afforded it. It was a weekend thing. We didn't use an IV. We did really, really well.
Responsible.
What do they call it?
Addicts.
They call it a functioning addict, right?
Yeah.
In my mind. This is the power of my addiction, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And so we're doing great. Life is great. Well, then Jen gets a little paranoid. And I'm telling you, when I get high and I get paranoid, I'm thinking the government's everywhere, right? And so it wasn't long before realizing that I couldn't function. So November of 2014 is when I first used. So from 2007 to 2014, that was my first relapse. And my dad died. I did well, right? My dad died in August of 2015.
So when that happened, were you alone here? You had your husband, and then it was just
I've always just had my husband here. All my family's in Idaho.
Okay.
My dad died.
How did he die?
I get emotional.
Okay, you don't have to say.
No, he's fine. He was fine. Everything was great. He got told that he had poor circulation. Now my dad was 120 pounds, soaking wet. Okay, but he was told that he had poor circulation in his legs, which was a common thing with all his family. So I think he's like one of 16 siblings, and so he had poor circulation. I had my grandpa die that way. I think my uncle died that way within the last couple of years. And so when I met with him, I seen him, and because I was staying with him when he realized, and I told him that I started relapse, and he's like, I want you to come and stay with me so we can get you back on track. Yeah. And so I stayed the last 5 weeks of his life with him, side by side. My little girl got to spend time with him, sleep on his lap. Yeah. She took him everywhere the last 5 weeks. I'm thankful for that. But he went to sleep and he didn't get up. That night, he told me, he said, I was leaving to go stay with my husband and watch his family's camper for 2 days because they were going to leave and they couldn't leave it there. And so we went out there, and my dad told me, I don't think you should go. Your uncle's coming over. I think that you should stay here. And I'm like, no, Dad, I got to go. And the last words that he said to me, because he was helping me out of Ogden, get up to Colville, and he was giving me directions. And he said, I love you, baby girl. That's what he called me. And I said, I love you too, Daddy. And then that was the last time I heard from him. So this is really cool. So that night at 3, that night, it was so weird. There was a lot of meth-induced psychosis throughout my time. But this, even if it was meth-induced psychosis, it was real to me, and I hold on to this. That night, I kept calling. Me and my husband had gotten a fight, and he went and stayed at the camper. I got a motel room, and I kept calling him. I need to call my mom and dad. I feel like I'm not going to make it through the night. Like I had this weird feeling that I wasn't going to survive the night. Yeah. And so I didn't. I passed out. I woke up at 3 a.m. and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like it was so weird. So I got in my car and I went over to to where my husband was staying, and I ended up staying there because I was so worried that something was going to happen to me. And come to find out, that's the same time that my dad was dying. Wow. Yeah, and so that
stuff like that happened.
Yeah. So that morning, right, I woke up, my husband had left. That morning I woke up and I was headed down the canyon to go back to my dad's, and I got a call saying, hey, your dad died last night, and I lost it. And that I spiritual thing, like I'm really into light and spirit and energy and stuff like that. And when I got back to his house, I hit the ground. And something in my soul broke. in a way that I've never felt, like, because like my dad was like my dad, right? But something in my soul broke. I lost the man that gave me the life that I've always wanted, right? I lost the guy that he was the perfect rock and example to me my whole life. I just didn't have the ability to be with him all the time, right? He was the perfect example that I needed to, like, if I would have had him, I think I would have been successful.
But I think he's still here. Plus he provided you for this space. Like I know it's challenging, and I love seeing you cry in this sense, because you are one of the most courageous, strongest women that I know, right? And you're always uplifting and positive for everyone else, and I get to see you.
Yeah.
Right. And he also introduced you to Utah, and you're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is his home.
Yeah.
And he provided you here, which provided you with us. And I know we're probably running out of time. And so it's like knowing, I think he actually provided you with a lot, and still does, and provides us with a lot because of that, you know? And so actually I can see a lot more. And so just pointing that out to you, because I know I'm grateful, and I know, and the ways that we're grateful is because we feel the pain or the struggle.
Yeah.
Creates that more gratefulness for us, you know?
And I feel like he's with me all the time. And so I ended up, after he died in 2018, I tried to get help in 2016. I sought out Odyssey House because I knew I didn't want that life anymore. I knew that I needed to get life back. And so I started seeking help, but it took me, and that's when I met you for the first time in FTR in 2016 up at Sugar House.
Yeah.
And then she's got a seed. So let me tell you, I'm going to share this real quick. So she had sat down with me, and I was going through a lot of psychosis, and she looked at me. When she looked at me so deep in my soul, and she said, Jen, in order to gain everything, you have to lose everything, including your children. And I was like, this crazy lady, she doesn't know what she's talking about. In 2018, that's resonated with me, because at this point I had lost everything, pretty much even my child. And so I ended up going to Odyssey in 2018, and super successful. I have almost 5 years clean and sober this time.
Yes.
And I'm way different than I've ever been in my life. I'm actively involved. I work the steps. I work with sponsees. I go to the prison. I'm involved with Odyssey, all different ways. Super involved in the recovery community. And I have so much to offer someone. So I'm just continuing my education so that I can be the best version of myself to help people that went through a lot of the trauma that I did.
You are so up all the time. I can't even imagine what you must have been like on meth. I mean, it's like the way you talk now, and the speed and everything, and being up. I mean, gosh.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No,
yeah.
You know, it's like you'd be great on a first date because you do all the talking.
Nice,
so
right? I love it.
And the first time I saw you was when you came to the parents program at Odyssey, right? And you had a time period before they determined that it would be appropriate for your daughter to come join you and live in the program. And I just happened to be there the day that her grandma brought her over from Colorado to be reunited with you. And it was in the back parking lot of the administration building. And it was like, and I had just started working at Odyssey. And so I've sort of followed you through, and we've been friends from there. And I know Aspen, I think she would recognize me anyway.
Absolutely.
So things are good now. And you're working in the same house that you went through, right? The parents program.
Yep.
It worked.
It worked. Process works.
If you want it.
If you want it.
Yeah.
Something's got to change.
If you want it. Yeah. That's special.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's an amazing story. Yeah. And I'm glad you came and are willing to share, because that's being honest is one of the things that all three of us are in recovery, and being honest about it is one of the most important things. And you're brutally honest. And a good person.
Thank you.
We're rooting for you. We love you.
Super proud of you.
We love you.
Very proud.
Thank you for watching another edition of Odyssey House Journals.